You know, this talk is about communication and the importance of communication for data. You see, there's still a lot of learning we have to go through, because right now, they send us to the furthest away room. That's where communication is sometimes still seen for data, even though it's actually fundamental. If I could get the title of my presentation. So, because the problem often that we face, that you face, is who cares? We talk about data, we talk about statistics, and people think it's for geeks. They don't understand the relevance of statistics and data. And so what I would like to do in this presentation is to talk a bit about how we can change that. Could we switch, please? So, good, thank you. So you all know that reliable and accurate statistics are key for sound policy making. And this is obvious to many people at this conference, to hopefully everybody at this conference, but it's not at all obvious to others. Whether it's decision makers or the general public, it's not clear to them how important data is for right policy making. Statisticians are really perceived as geeks, you know, who are doing their own thing, as opposed to people who are working on something that's super vital for the right policy making. So that's why I have decided to hold this session. Because why is all of this a problem? Well, it's a problem because unless it's based on sound evidence and data, policy making is subjective, sometimes wrong as a result. The policies that are passed are often not backed up by science and data, and that's a problem. And then, well, it's also a problem because sometimes data people and statisticians have to beg for money that they don't get from their government or from their funders, again, because the importance of this line of work is not recognized. So that's why this misperception of statistics and something geeky is an issue. So what should we do? We can sit around and complain, but there's more that we can do. We could first of all educate policymakers and explain the importance of data. And to do that, I suggest that, you know, data people, statisticians, and communication professionals need to work together and contribute to this explanation that's going to hopefully make a difference for all of us. So what should we do? When we communicate to any audience, first we need to think about what kind of language that audience understands or uses. So we need to use their language when communicating about the importance of data and statistics, and not our own. They don't care about methodology, you know, they don't care about some of that. What they care about is what's the impact of the work. You know, how has work in statistics, how have numbers, how data-based policy making has been beneficial in other areas. We also need to work through media and social media, and we have to be credible and transparent and make sure they understand that we're not manipulating data, we are presenting, you know, real data. And then we have to continuously listen to our audience and see what kind of communication has worked, and then use that kind of communication going forward. So I'd like to give you a couple of examples for this, stating the problem, and then also how we have answered that problem and come up with impactful ways to communicate the usefulness of data. So I am now the director of the UN Information Center in Indonesia, and I work with my colleagues across the UN agencies in communicating their work in an impactful manner. So Indonesia is a middle-income country which has impressive economic growth, but still there are many pockets of the country, of the society, that are poor or are vulnerable in other ways. But how can the government or even a municipality create a sound policy for LLB, leave no one behind, to target this vulnerable group? We would need data for that. But often that data is missing. There are data gaps that inhibit the government from really sound policy making in order to help the people who are vulnerable and are left behind. So to answer this, the UN did a study in 2022 identifying these vulnerable communities, the communities that are currently being left behind, and then shared this with the government. And what we found is, of course, there are many vulnerable communities, but particularly vulnerable are older women in rural areas. So then the answer that we are looking for is for both the UN and the government to define programs that are going to help these people. So that's sort of the background to our work in Indonesia and where data comes in. So, as the first example, I'd like to tell you about a project of the World Food Programme in this city of Kupang. Kupang is a city of about 500,000 people, and it's the capital of one of the poorest provinces in Indonesia. And there are high levels of food insecurity and poverty in this place. 20%, so 1/5 of the population is considered to be food insecure, so not having enough nutritious meals. And 40%, so quite high, 40% of children below 5 are stunted. So these are major issues the government wants to fix, but again, it needs data. The World Food Programme in Indonesia, together with the relevant government agency, developed what's called a Food Security Vulnerability Atlas, which is basically a neighborhood level mapping of the entire country. But the problem was that even though this data existed, it was not taken into account for policy making. You see? So in theory we know who the poor people are, but somehow the different branches of the governments have other means of deciding who the poor people are in their view, and therefore perhaps the aid that they're getting is not targeted to the right population. So the municipality, or the city council, let's say, of this town passed a decree signed by the mayor that as of January this year, they must take into account this full vulnerability atlas when deciding on any social policies. So this is really to illustrate that even when you have data, you need somebody, you need a decision maker to say, okay, I'm actually going to use that data. So once, this has just started, but once we have results on this, what we plan to do is to profile some of the people who perhaps did not get food aid before, or did not get the kind of support that they are now getting, and then based on that, roll out this program in the rest of the country. And for that, what we need is impactful communication, with pictures like this, with stories, where people can tell human interest stories, how they have been helped now, that food aid is targeted to the right population segments. And it's not just food aid, but all kinds of other social protection, even agricultural subsidies. Okay? So the idea is that through the examples, through these people-centered stories, we are going to be able to talk to policymakers to adapt similar legislation throughout the country. Another example I'd like to tell you about is our report on disability data in Indonesia. Historically, in many countries, and Indonesia is no exception, disability statistics have been insufficient, and because the data collected is not enough and is also often not useful. According to official Indonesian statistics, only between 4 and 5% of people have disabilities, when actually we know that worldwide this is 15%. So therefore, this shows this data gap. So why is that? Well, that's because people with disabilities are already excluded oftentimes from surveys. I mean, to start with, if you have impaired vision or hearing disability, you can't or you don't want to participate in surveys. So that's already going to lead to underreporting. There is often stigma towards disability, which means that people often don't admit that they have a disability, and if they don't admit, if you don't have the data, then the government will not be able to help them. Also, different government departments have different ways of defining disability, and therefore they have different ways of counting those with disability, which again makes it very difficult to have an aggregated database throughout the country. So the UN came up with a report highlighting some of these and identifying gaps, identifying what next steps the government should be taking, and On the communication side, we did a major campaign to show to policymakers, but also to the wider public, just this issue, highlighting the fact that in Indonesia, only 1/3 as many people are reporting disabilities in other countries, to really show and sensitize the society and policymakers to this issue, and how the people living with disability are a much bigger portion of the population. So it's again an example of how data work and communication work go hand in hand. I'd like to now give you examples from previous work I had done. This is nothing to do with Indonesia, but it shows you in an industry that's so misunderstood how with data and good communication of data you can make a difference. So before this job, I was the Chief of Digital Communication at the IAEA, which is the nuclear agency of the United Nations, International Atomic Energy Agency. And we spent a lot of time using data and coming up with infographics to show the importance of nuclear as a safe and green energy source. So nuclear energy in many countries, particularly in the West, really has a PR problem. People think, it's like super dangerous and dirty and all of that. And with good data, you can change that. So I'm going to show you two examples. These are parts of infographics that were part of campaigns that we run on both social media and media. So here you start at, so the average person in the world lives for about 73 years. This is how much electricity they consume in their lifetime. You be the average person in the world. Of course, there are big discrepancies between countries, but still that's the average. So how much fuel do you need to provide that electricity? For you. Well, you can either use 21 elephants worth of coal. So imagine there were 21 elephants in this room. Well, as much coal as 21 elephants. By the time you burn all that, we will have provided the energy, the electricity needs for each of you for your life. 21 elephants worth. Or you can use nuclear power and you just need an X size of uranium, right? So 1 X size of uranium is as much electricity as 21 elephants. Now, this is simple, but it took us a really long time to come up with this. How you take some data and turn it into something people can understand. And they would think, oh, so actually just 1 egg, that's so much smaller than 21 elephants. But so very often, the data is there, and what's difficult is to come up with a way to actually bring it across more simply to people. The last slide talks about the amount of CO2 that different sources of electricity emit into their production, and you can see nuclear at the bottom is the lowest. Now, the other myth about nuclear is that it's dangerous. Everything is dangerous. Me walking off this stage is dangerous, I could have fallen. But danger is relative, and so again, I want to show you how we have kind of come up with an infographic to demonstrate how dangerous generating electricity it may be using different sources. You see, when you burn coal, brown coal or coal, actually lots of people die because they get lung cancer or whatever, similar diseases if they live next to a power plant. People don't talk about that, but per amount of electricity produced, the electricity here, the unit is about, for 5,000 people, electricity for their whole life. Yeah? So 32 people will die because of burning coal. Then you've got black coal, slightly better, then oil, biomass, natural gas, hydro. Because of hydro, people sometimes die because they get there, if they live next to a dam that collapses, they get flooded, things like that. Wind, and look, nuclear is 0.03 deaths. So, yes, we all know people died at Chernobyl. Perhaps you guys think lots of people died in Fukushima, and they did, but not because of exposure to radiation. So lots of myths about nuclear, but when you look at the numbers, how much electricity nuclear has generated, and you compare it with the number of people who died, then it's actually a very slow number. The only source of electricity with few deaths is solar. Okay, so again, I'm not here to educate you about nuclear. What I want to show you is that there's a complex data, complex numbers, and how you need to bring that across in a way that people can understand. A chart like this people understand. Big red, small blue. Okay? So both on this slide and on the previous one, that I'm not sure I can go back to. Anyhow, what I wanted to show you is how even when there's data, you need communication people and good ideas in order to communicate that data and bring that across. So this is what I wanted to talk to you about, to highlight the importance of impactful communication in order to show the importance of data and statistics, and how those of you who work in statistics offices, I suggest you need to invest in communication, work with professionals who can help you communicate the impact of your data, whether it's the impact of those new policies in Kupang, the poor area where now the people who are really poor get the food aid, or whether it's to show that something like nuclear is actually environmentally friendly and safe. So thank you for that. I think we have some time. I'm interested in your experience, your comments, and questions. We've got a mic traveling around.
Thank you. I just like the presentation. I'm from Malaysia, so I'm doing industry experience with and one of the government agencies as partner, and then some of the initiative that you show is kind of like linked to inclusivities, because that's our government's policies part of the direction. But I do want to inquire about your last two slides, because when I talk about the nuclear emissions and when you talk about safety, the data that you present doesn't seem to address that very clearly. Because if you talk about safety, like in chemicals, we're thinking like how do we say certifications, or how do we say that there's certain standards that we handle certain procedures and so. But how does your misinformation from the public, if they present, how do they handle this? Because I think one of the issues when data is presented, it gets interpreted in various forms throughout different channels in social media. It's very hard to control that. So
yes.
Maybe can you address that a little bit?
Thank you. That's right. That's a great question.
Yeah.
And Malaysia has had its history with nuclear energy.
We have similar chemicals that leaks out, and it's so hard to control the damage. It's like 3-4 years, and people still think that nuclear is dangerous.
So look, misinformation is a big issue, right? We can put our data, how people interpret the data, how the data may get used, we cannot control.
Yeah.
But what we can do is that we can make the data that we present, very clear. Make it so that, for instance, on the previous slide that I showed you with the safety, with all the footnote, with all the details, so people take this and copy it somewhere else. The source is there.
Yeah.
We can make it more difficult for them to take that data, but we can't, control people and stop them from using and possibly misusing our data. What we can do is we can find amplifiers for our version, for the truth, right? So we can make our own presentation of the data and the impact of the data social media friendly. We can liaise with, have relationships with media, so that they are going to, use our version. We can explain why the misuses of data are incorrect.
Yes, sir. But my question is, what kind of single source of data that can actually solve those misconcerns of the?
So look, there is no such thing anymore as single source of truth, right? You will not be able to, control everybody. What you can do is that you just need to go back and emphasize again the correctness of your data. It's inherent that people can, again, like use and misuse data. I think what's important when you want to sort of provide, what you can do is provide objective data, and people have to take their own conclusions. You will not convince the 10% of the population that's against whatever it is that you are trying to promote. Typically, any idea, 10% of people are against, 10% are for, the other 80% don't care. It's those other 80% you can convince and you can care. Whether it's about fighting childhood poverty or use of nuclear or whatever it is. With nuclear communication, it's not Greenpeace activists that you should be targeting. You won't change their mind. It's okay. But the people in between.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. I have a question about how do you make this more impactful in a concrete way. So I think I really liked your example about nuclear power, and I understand now that, okay, this is less dangerous compared to other forms of electricity. So, energy sources. So, so how do we make our conversation or our delivery more impactful in some more concrete ways? My name is Eugene. I'm from the IMF. Thank you.
Hello, Eugene, and thank you for the question. So once you figure out what your message is and how you illustrate that message, whether the coupon case from the city with the mother and the child, or the nuclear with the elephant and the egg, then you need to find channels to deliver the message. Through your own social media, try to come up with infographics that can go viral, talk to influencers and convince them to amplify your message, establish relationships with the media so that you talk to them, and just basically find ways to push that message out. Companies do this all the time, right? They want you to buy Nike or Adidas or Coca-Cola, whatever it is. So what we have is data, impactful policies that we want to promote. So those very same marketing methods that we should be using, of course, with a lot less money. You will tell me when my time is up, right? Because I have to, yeah, okay. Give the floor to Siri, who I saw earlier. Okay, so I'm going to come back. Any other comments?
Thank you for the presentation. My name is Youngjun from Good Neighbors Global Policy Center. I found most cases in fact that seems like you started to collect data related to the problem, for example, stunting issues or food insecurity in Indonesia. But were there any cases where you identified the problem with data? I mean, not starting with the identified problems.
So, you mean where we identify the problem based on data? Or, well, so I mean, this talk is more about communicating data. But so one example I gave about the what we call the LLB study was an example of that. The Union Indonesia has identified lots of left behind communities. This survey showed that the most left behind were older women in rural areas. Right? So that's an example when you do a study and that kind of data leads to different policies. But I'm going to actually hand over the mic to my colleague Erlangga, who is on the substantive side of data in the UN Indonesia, and he can answer your question better.
Okay. In the context of the data, LNOB, means like someone that someone that probably left behind. Left behind is mean not only for the policy, but not visible in the data. This is also opportunity. When you become not visible, you need to tell that somebody is not visible. Now it can become a message. I don't know whether I will answer the question or.
He was asking for an example when we did a survey and had some surprising data about LNOB.
Okay. In the LNOB context, there are two things that will be visible. First, about the someone that have multiple or experience different difficulties or multiple deprivation. It means like people that we expect that only left behind in one element, it can be left behind from another element. For example, because mentioned about the poor ladies, poor woman in the village. Probably she also not educated. She also left behind in the social structure, in the social context. This is one issue. When we communicate that community or advocate doing advocate among them, provide doing some advocacy, we need to inform that there is someone that left behind, probably, or then how many of them, and then what the implication for the bigger aspect, what is policy, many things that we can unpack from that situation. And another element that I would like to raise here is because people left behind, even they left behind in the element of the data, they're not visible in the survey, they are not visible in any statistic. For example, people who are like nomad population. This is also LNOB, people who are left behind, even the data, because when you do a survey, sometimes you based on the residence, like census or survey, based on the residency there. And then people who are like, for example, living in the street, or people like living in a very remote area, is also left behind, but not visible in statistics. the way to unpack that situation will be in a different way. You know, not to the number, but to show the invisibility. I don't know whether it's clear enough.
Yes, so first we need to have the right data, that's for sure. And that's what Alanda works on. This presentation was more about once you have the data, so what? What do you do with it when people care? So thank you for your attention. Don't go away. The next part of this session will be conducted by my friend Siri, who will talk about social media.
Be close, everybody. Wow, people really keep the time in China. That's amazing. Maybe we stretch a little bit. Everybody stand up, stretch a little bit. We got a minute, so let's do it. Come on, everyone, stretch. Yeah, breathing. You want to lead us? Come on, Louise. Yeah. Come on, team, please stand up. Come on, everybody, stand up, stand up, stand up. Please stretch. Come on, you can do it. Thank you. Yeah, stretch. Yeah, we all sit too much, right? Sitting is killing us. You know that? You all know this, right? Sitting is killing us. Thank you. All right, let's see. I think we have a presentation. This is interesting because I'm doing a social media presentation without having access to social media, so it's going to be an adventure. So please forgive me. Whatever happens, whatever goes wrong, will go wrong. Thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Sri Srinivasan, and I am the former Chief Digital Officer of the City of New York, as well as the Metropolitan Museum of Art and Columbia University. And in all three places, I thought about the future of communication. And how do you take what you do, and how do you reach more people? So that's the subject of what we're going to be talking about. In Whova, many of you indicated what you want to cover. So I'm just going to go into the Whova app and check to make sure we're all on the same page. These are the kinds of things that you would like to cover today. So I'm just going to go into my sessions. And let's see, we've got 27 responses, so that's a lot. So I appreciate that. One of the things we did is take a look at what social media platforms you're on. So number 1, LinkedIn. Number 2, Twitter. Number 3, Instagram. Number 4, Facebook. Not what is your favorite of the non-Chinese social media platforms. Pinterest got 0 and Snapchat got 0. And that might be because nobody here is under 14. If you're 14, then Snapchat is number 1, right? So that was one thing. And then the other was what is one thing you want to get out of this meeting? There were a lot of items here. Not all of them apply to what we're doing, but we're going to certainly try. And just to help you find me later, you've got the presentation here and the link to the presentation, but also my contact information. You can see my email, all the channels, etc. And I'm a big fan of Linktree. Anybody familiar with Linktree? You see in Instagram they use that, right? Linktree is really good because you give people one link and then they can get everything, right? So I'm a big believer in Linktree. One change that is coming to Instagram, it may not have come to your Instagram yet, that's really big, is you can have 5 links in your bio. You know how you can have only 1 link in your bio now? You can have 5. So that's coming, watch for that. If anybody has it, you can check if you have it right now. If you pull out your Instagram and check if you have it. So I'm going to be giving you, I need to use the mic, don't I? Yeah, because it's being recorded. Yes, thank you, sir. So what I tell people is in a session like this, I'm going to give you a lot of ideas, lots of practical tips, but I may go too fast. So first, just raise your hand, slow down, and I can repeat anything you want. Okay? Second is that there'll be so many ideas that you don't know which ones are useful for you. So what I suggest is to have a piece of paper or your laptop or your phone and make 2 columns. One column, you will say, try now, meaning try soon, right? Try soon. And another column, you can say, try later. That way you will be able to annotate the conversation. Annotation, making notes on something like this is really important for what we're trying to do. You might have a third column saying, oh my God, they brought this loser all the way from New York. What a waste of time. You can write anything you like as long as you write. That's what I want. Okay, so everybody with me, you've got all the information. And in my day job, I work with a company that I started where we help organizations big and small with their social and digital work. And all of this is built on my theory of the 2 footprints. We all have 2 footprints. One is our physical footprint, meaning the world that knows us really well.
these are the people we work with, these are the people we help, these are our bosses, etc. And that's very important. They love us. But the digital footprint is the rest of the world. And how do we reach those people? Right? I learned this at the museum world. In the world of museums, there are CEOs of museums, and they think they're famous, but they're only museum famous, meaning inside the museums they're famous. Nobody knows them outside. And there's so much potential. So I encourage you to think about our conversation today through that lens. How do we get more people to know what we're doing? Because if you get more people to know what you're doing, you make more money, you help more people, you get more resources to what you're doing. So that's a long way to introduce what we have here. And by the way, you have the slides already, so if you want to leave right now, you can, because you already have the slides. And one of my friends said this to me, and I was so struck by this statement that I put it on my business card. He said, "We do some jobs for money, and some for the honor and privilege of doing the work. If we get to do both, we are lucky." And I think all of you working in the UN, working for NGOs, working for grassroots, this is why you do it, right? You may do it for the privilege of helping people. And I love that idea, and encourage all of you to think about why you do what you do, because daily, you don't feel like this, right? We have a lot of problems and communications issues and problems and all that, but how do we go through that is what I like to think about in what we do. So when I was Chief Digital Officer of the Met, I was asked, how come you don't put a QR code next to every painting, right? The Metropolitan Museum of Art, why don't you put a QR code? And I said, Americans hate QR codes. Americans don't know how to use them. In China, everybody knows how to use them. India, Europe, but not in the rest of Asia, of course, but not in the US. And why is that? It changed because, of course, the pandemic, people got menus, they put the QR code. But what really happened is that Apple built a QR code reader into its phone in 2014 and didn't tell anybody. And that's our lesson, one of our lessons for today. That you do such good work, but do people know about it? Do you tell people about it? Right? Just because you know it, you know what Apple did? It launched 75 features that day. When you launch 75 features, that means you don't have any features, right? And so think about your own work. What is one thing, if you can always think for a second, what's one thing that you wish more people knew? And the answer to that is whatever it is, you can tell people. And that's what social media is. We want to use social media to increase your footprint, to have more people appreciate what you're doing, get you more resources, more funding, help more people. That's what social media can do for you. So anyway, so here's the guy who doesn't like QR codes, who's put on so many QR codes. You know all of them, right? So on the upper left is LinkedIn, and then what's the next one? Instagram. Come on, you know, what is this? WhatsApp. Snapchat, again, nobody under 14. Messenger. Yeah, Venmo, you might know. If you want to send me any money, you can send me money right now. Just take out your phone and send me some money. PayPal. Twitter. This is Twitter. TikTok. And this is my old favorite way in which they used to do WeChat, but they don't do the bread anymore. Do you know what happened to the bread?
Well, they now
move to cat. I see just a plain boring thing though now on my QR code. Anyway, so this is, and then I have my link tree in the middle. So this is just to show you the range of ways you can reach people, but the most important thing here is not any of these. What is the most important thing on the screen on the upper right? My email address, right? In a TikTok world, email still matters. We've got to still value email in what we're doing, and that's something that I think about all the time. I want to tell you that part of my story, you know, I was the Chief Digital Officer of 3 amazing institutions, but I didn't tell you that I lost 2 jobs in 12 months. They were having financial difficulties, and so I was laid off. And I went on Facebook and said, I've lost my job. Tell me what to do next. And I gave people a Google form, and 1,200 people around the world filled in this form. Some good ideas, some beautiful, terrible ideas. But in the worst moment of my life, I felt a global digital hug. The PBS NewsHour, it's a big TV show, did 7 minutes on me and why this strange guy is talking about losing your job. Why do I show you this? Because this is what happens in our lives, right? There are things that matter to us, but we're bad at communicating it outwards. Right? Think of your own family or friends who lost jobs, right? What I did was ridiculous, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, I did a 20. Nobody should do that. But most people do a 2, where they just tell a few people. So the same thing, you're not going to lose your jobs, you're all fantastic. But is there some other project, some other thing that you wanted to reach thousands, millions of people that you can do? And I have a QR code here. I did a 5-year Twitter thread on the future of work and resilience and all of that. You can see that on the screen. I also have a newsletter, and newsletters are big in the US. I know they're not big everywhere. What is the situation in China? Is newsletters important? Or no, not at all? WeChat articles are important, but newsletters, we use Substack, and this was, as you know, we just passed a moment where we had 6 months of his ownership and 1 year of his threatening to buy Twitter happened at the same time. And I asked DALL-E, which is a generative AI, you know, the ChatGPT video, photo, to draw him as a boss baby, and they made that. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, did you get the picture you needed? Oh yeah, you have the slide. You can leave, please. So everything I do is based on this slide. Okay, this is the most important thing I will tell you today. That the scarcest resource of the 21st century is human attention. How do we get, keep, and grow attention to our projects? And what I love about data experts and data scientists, and I work with them all the time, is you know your stuff so well, but how do you tell that story? How do you pull, you remember somebody said today a 50-page report? Somebody said 50-page report. What's the one item you want to tell everybody? In New York, there are two famous museums, many famous museums. One is the Metropolitan Museum, the other is MoMA. Have you heard of it? Museum of Modern Art. Very famous. They tell you there's one exhibition this year, and if you miss it, you're a loser. At the Met, we have 17 museums mushed together, so we have 45 exhibitions. So what happens? So nobody gets promoted properly, right? Here, they say, okay, what is the one thing you want to leave this report with? What's the one thing, 2 things, 3 things maybe, but not 57 things, not 50 reports. Like, go, focus. That's what I will ask all of you to do. Think about how can you focus more on what you're doing. By the way, this was said by Les Hinton, who's the publisher of the Wall Street Journal. If you're tweeting, you can tweet at him right now and say, hey, at Les Hinton, we're talking about you in Hangzhou, and he will suddenly appear here, of course. Yeah, that's the magic of Twitter, that you can do that. So first I'm going to give you the dirty secret of social media. That almost everyone will miss almost everything you do. Right? We have this idea that I put out a tweet and everybody has seen it. In fact, nobody has seen it. And that's really pathetic, right? Now, there is a way to get everybody to see it. Do you know what the answer is? No, until you make a mistake. Make a mistake and then everybody will see it. Right? That's the danger of social media. The project that we want everybody to see, they don't see. We make a mistake and then everybody sees what we're talking about, and that's a problem. So something to keep in mind. Whenever I speak, I say start with. Sorry.
Wow.
I always say always be charging your devices. Always be connecting, right? Please connect with each other. That's what we say on Hoover, on LinkedIn, all of that. And then always be collecting is about using, like I'm giving you some 30 slides here. You'll never look at them again. But if you leave today and take pictures of 2, 3 slides, you'll look at them and you're waiting for a bus or something. Not just me, any conference, right? Thousands of slides come your way. Take out your phone and take a picture. I saw our colleague in the back just taking a picture. Just do that. When you see something interesting, get into the habit of doing that. When you're on a Zoom call, somebody makes a presentation, learn how to take a quick screenshot, right? So that you're in the habit, always collecting, making a difference. And then always be learning, because things are changing every day. Not just on Twitter, Instagram, so many new features coming out every week, so many new things are happening. And I want to tell you, LinkedIn is underappreciated. Even not in this room, because you guys said #1 is LinkedIn, but look at this. I say it so often that people quote me on Twitter saying that it's underappreciated. So how can we use LinkedIn better? What can we do with it? There's so many tricks and tools and things that you can do with it, and there's so many opportunities for that as well. Now, let's talk about social media. You folks are not necessarily in social media, you're in communications maybe, but most of you are data scientists, working in experts. But look what they're saying. Most in-demand skills by function, social media, communication, marketing. So no matter what your business is, you're in marketing, right? Like normally I'll ask, what do you do? People will say, I'm an expert, and I say, no, you're in marketing. Your job is to tell your story. I'm joking, of course, right? But it's no point having such a great story if you don't tell the story. How do you get it out there? How do you get it to more people? And of course, we're not going to cover everything in a 30-minute session. And the top networks 2023, you can see here, so somebody made a list of the most important channels, and you can see a lot of Chinese channels here, and they forgot to put LinkedIn. How is that possible? 500 million people use it, and they forgot to put it here. That's why LinkedIn, and who owns LinkedIn? Microsoft, right? Big corporation, and people forget about LinkedIn. Especially as Twitter is dying slowly, LinkedIn has become more important. What I tell people about LinkedIn is a way to show off your expertise. If you think about Instagram is to show off your life, you know, you're drinking some fun drinks and you're dancing and you're going to sunsets and all of that, that's what Instagram is. But LinkedIn is for showing off your expertise. And what is one of the big secrets of the 21st century? Expertise matters. And your expertise matters, right? So that the more you know, and you add this extra layer of communication, you're going to do so well, right? I've heard stories here about how well the UN does on social media, in Chinese social media, right? Sometimes you have 100,000 people watching something, reading, commenting. That's huge numbers. Why? Because you're already doing good work, and then you accelerate it with social and digital. And you all know Louise, who's here, who's from the UN China. She's a great communications expert herself. So I'm not sure why she's here listening, but thank you. One of the complaints about Facebook is that we don't like the algorithm, right? You all heard this, right? Well, you can fix the algorithm, because the algorithm lets you pick something called see first. You can have up to, you can pick up to 30 channels, people that you want to see first. So if you're tired of seeing garbage on Facebook, it's because you have not chosen the 30 items you want to see. So please go ahead and do that. The second thing is legacy contact. Are you familiar with this? So legacy contact is assign someone in your family or your friend to be your legacy contact, so that if and when you pass, it gets made into a memorial. And I can tell you, I'm telling you to do this now. I'm asking you as a favor to me. Please do this, but you won't do it. Because people don't listen, okay? I'm telling you, pull out your phone, tell your friend, be my... but first warn them, because they may think you're dying or something. So my mom sat in on many of my sessions, and she didn't do it, and she passed in January. I was blessed to be with her. She had a wonderful ending, as much as it can be wonderful. She was beautiful, and but she did not do this. You know who the pain? Like our pain at the worst moment was magnified by people posting things and asking questions. It was terrible. So I needed to call my friends at Facebook to change it. So if you do that now, if and when, it'll make a difference. I can promise you that it matters. So please try to do that. It takes you 30 seconds. You just Google Facebook legacy contact and do that. Okay, moving on. And this is what you do. So you say see first. So you can do it like this. Right? Everybody got that? Okay. All right, so let's talk about what is social media about. Right? Social media is about storytelling. You had pointed that out. And it's really important to tell the stories. Think about all the great work you're doing, right? And how do we tell people so that they understand what is this? Why is this important? Right? How do you pick that one thing and tell that story about that one thing? Instead of trying to tell all the things, there's a great lesson I learned as a teacher and speaker from somebody saying that as a speaker, you go to a conference with a suitcase full of things. You know, remember the Samsonite suitcase? You're dragging this big suitcase full of wonderful things that I want to tell you. But what you really need is a toiletry bag. Right? The toiletry bag is the 5, 6 things I want you to leave with today. Not the giant suitcase that I'm carrying to this. But we all do that with our social media, for our organizations. We want to tell everybody every wonderful thing. That means nobody will learn to listen. But if you think toiletry kit, right, instead of suitcase. So how do we make sure we're using that toiletry bag? I need to come up with a better analogy maybe, not to talk about toilets in the morning in a conference. Next is social media is about visuals. What are the visuals we're using? How are we doing this? So I have this idea, I call it a thumb stopper. Every time you post something, you need a thumb stopper. Why? People are on their phones like this all day. Stop their thumb, right? What is the one thing you want them to see? And so it can be a picture, graphic, image, anything you want. But post a thumb stopper every time, and you can do that very easily. Social media is about moments, not about the entire journey. Right? You can think about when you've gone with your family to a wonderful vacation, You don't remember the whole airline and the getting to the front desk and they say you can't check in for another 3 hours. That's not the things, right? The moments, what are the beautiful sunset or whatever it is, those moments, think about that rather than the whole journey. And social media is about trust. What are the things that they trust you for? So you have to be so good that when I say something happened, people believe me, right? When Michael Jackson died, there's a company in America called TMZ. Some of you may have heard it. It's like a salacious gossip. But they said Michael Jackson died. I knew it is 100% true if they said it. Because for them, that's like the president resigning for Washington Post, right? It will be, Washington Post will not mess up that story of the president dying or resigning. TMZ will not mess up Michael Jackson dying story. And that's what you need to be. In your field, so trust, you're already trusted, but in the greater field, what can you do to be trusted? This is at this point where I bring in my Twitter and I show you things I can't do that. We're working off of the PDF. Social media is about relationships. One of the things that we did at the Met is it's okay for you to post every day about whatever you're doing, but make relationships, connect. So we connected with other museums. So at the Met, we had 17 Van Gogh paintings, paintings by Vincent van Gogh, and we connected with museums around the world who have 1, 2, 7, 10, and the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. I don't know, they probably have 50, I don't know. And we would all share each other's Van Gogh paintings, because then people would pay attention. The other Van Gogh story I'll tell you is that, you know how you're sitting with your principals, like your CEO or your executive director, chief, and you're sitting there and they give you updates, right? Every department gives you an update. And one of the departments said, our 17 Van Goghs are together for the first time in 20 years. And everybody nodded, and we just moved on. And I said, whoa, your 17 Van Goghs are together, first time in 20 years? That's a campaign, that's a story, right? And so we just started doing that on social, and people came to see the 17 Van Goghs together. So you have to push. What is that one thing? What is that moment? What is the way in which you can do that? Social media is about generosity. Talking about other people. Don't talk about you all the time, right? Think about your phone, right? Right now, somebody could call you. Your irritating friend calls you. You look at it, and you're like, yeah, you ignore it. But you have this other friend who calls, who always first thing she says is, are you free? And then she says, how's your day? Right? So when she calls, you see this, you step out of the meeting and you say, oh, hold on 1 second, and then you go outside and you talk to her because she makes you feel better, she's a better person, you're a better person talking to her, right? And then that other friend, the first friend will ask you, how come you didn't reply to me? And you'll say, I was busy. Even if you were not busy, you will lie, right? You hit the ignore button. How do we make sure our content is the accept button and not the ignore button on your phone? How do we make sure they accept us? How? By making sure it's not just me, me, me. A lot of museums were doing like, come to my tickets, come to my show, buy my tickets all the time. Don't do that. Talk about things around your topic as well. Not just your own expertise, but what else is happening around you. Who are other people doing interesting things? Because what will happen, especially in the NGO world, I do a lot of work with UN refugees, the Refugee Agency and others, and we tell them, like, you have so many good stories, right? But don't just talk about refugees, the refugees that you are dealing with. Talk about refugee problem in general also. And International Rescue Committee is doing something great, talk about them too. And be more generous than you have been in the past. Social media is about people. It's not about the things, it's not about the stats, it's not about the report, it's about people. How do you highlight people in everything you do? If you do that, you can be very, very successful. Sorry, I'm kind of speeding up here, going as fast as I can. Here are 4 things social media can do for you. It can help you find new ideas, opportunities, connect with audiences, bring eyeballs and attention to your work, and deepen your brand. And this could be for individuals as data experts, but also for your organizations. Think about, some organizations do 1 and 2 really well, 3 and 4. Very few do all of them. And there's a rubric you can use to say, okay, is this a successful social media? I can look at somebody's social media for 2 weeks, and I can tell you whether to hire him or not, hire her or not. Because you can judge so much from social media, and you can see it. But I want to tell you, social media is hard. I posted something, I got 185,000 impressions. I got, great, I'm going to get thousands of new followers. How many followers did I get? one follower, right? Why? Because that's just human beings, right? You see great content, sometimes you follow, and sometimes you just, whatever, move on, right? I'm telling you, how many of you are going to do Facebook legacy contact? The answer is going to be 0. Nobody's going to do it, because even if I tell you it'll be really good for your family, you still won't do it. That's how we are as human beings. I had a great day on social media. I got 225 new followers. I got the formula. I'm going to be successful on social media. Then what happened? Same content. That many people left me the same day for the same content. How is that possible? Right? Including, I'm not looking on the screen because I get upset. Somebody I helped get a job, he unfollowed me. So I'm not going to look because I get angry. But this is what we think. We think we're so great. This is what happens. Every time you post something, people will step away. So on social media, it's not who follows you that matters. It's who follows you that matters. Meaning, influential people should be part of your circle. You can have thousands, millions of followers, but do you have the right 1,000 followers? Do you have the right 100 followers, is what I would ask you. So here's refugees. We use a tool called Triangulate. And here they have 2 million followers. That's great. But look at this. Their top 100 followers have combined reach 500 million people. That doesn't mean 2 million people are not important. It doesn't mean only 100 are important. But it means, how do we make sure that we're reaching everybody, but reaching our 100 most important people in what we're doing? The thumb stoppers I was talking about, and by the way, if you want to reach out to Mitra, you can say at Mitra, we're talking about you. So I use tools like, so I'm going to show you a bunch of tools you can use with your phone. You don't need fancy production to do this. Big Collage, Canva, you all know the story of Canva, incredible tool. It's free. You can use it on your, how many of you have Canva in your office? Only 3, that's interesting, yeah. If this was America, it would be like 80% would have that. It'll come. It's an Australian company started by a woman, Melanie Perkins, so it was fantastic. Here's another thing, I use Typorama app, right? That's a thumb stopper. I made that in about 2 minutes on my phone. I like to do this. This is, my wife often will say something and say, Sri, don't tweet that, and I'll say, too late. It has already been tweeted. And so she said this when we were in Italy. Right? Another tool, IGM Play. If you can, there's so many things that you can use. You know, iPhone has now built a GIF generator on your phone, so you can shoot as a GIF on your phone in messages. And there are so many apps out there, but when we built the Met app, we said 3 attributes: simple, useful, delightful. Most agencies, when they're building something, they don't say simple, useful, or delightful. Like, how do we cram everything into it, right? So simple, useful, and delightful is something you can see. And how many people here use Bitmoji? Any Bitmoji users here? You all know what Bitmoji is? I like Bitmoji because he has better hair, and he's 10 pounds lighter than me, so I like it a lot. So now I'm going to give you, before we're almost done, we have time for questions, I'm going to give you just a chance to ask anything you like. So please go ahead. Yeah.
Sir, I think I can just raise a point.
Sure.
What about the trend of generative AI at the moment? Because you have an image,
Sure.
you probably can use data to duplicate these images, and then like as ChatGPTs, they rely on data scientists that comes on this field.
Yeah.
And this is a forum, so maybe you can give.
Sure. I'll give you my thoughts on generative AI just generally, and I've written 2 essays in my newsletter about it. I will say that there is so much potential with it, so much power, so much danger.
Yeah.
But we are panicking too much, as with everything. You remember when something comes along and everybody panics. There was a thing called chat roulette. Some of you who are parents may remember in the 2000s, it's a thing where you open your browser and you hit a button and you meet somebody, stranger in the world comes on, right? And you can imagine suddenly, all kinds of perverts would start showing up, and parents are like panicking. Oh no, chat roulette is the worst thing in the world. I did TV. I was invited as a guest to speak about the danger of the chat roulette, and now nobody even remembers it, right? So I say this too shall pass, or it'll get worse, is what I would say. So I wrote an essay where I said, people are scared about ChatGPT. And what I say is, this is actually not, it is, ChatGPT right now is the least capable it will ever be. The least capable it will ever be, and we're already scared. It's going to get more powerful, more strong, But we have to use it. We're human beings. I hate the idea that we should pause it, because that won't work. And by the way, Elon called for pausing it, do you remember?
Yeah.
And then what did he do? Next week he launched his own ChatGPT equivalent, right? So, and by the way, he funded ChatGPT also originally. So don't go by Elon, but just like trying to think about how do we use it for what we're doing. There's a wonderful Homer Simpson cartoon where Bart says, "This is the hottest summer of my life." And you know what Homer says? "It's the coldest summer of the rest of your life." Right? And we laugh, but it's tragic, right? If we don't laugh, we'll be crying all day. So let's get a couple more questions and then one final thing to show you. Yes. And we are on, what is the next after this? Is there a break? Is there a lunch break? Or does anybody know?
Yes,
For lunch.
Okay, so what I'll do is we'll end on time, but I'll stay up here and answer questions. Nicholas is here, so I don't know how long you can stay, but if you have questions of us, you can ask us as well. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for the presentation, very interesting. So I understand that digital presence is very important, but also you make this point that everyone is going to see it or remember it, right? So how do we reconcile those facts? Should we still do this?
Yeah, great question, and I appreciate your asking that. And it's an existential question. What's the point of doing all this if nobody sees it, right? And the reason you want to do this is because not everybody will see it, but the right people will see it. Is there a young person out there who sees your post about what you've done in, in India? Your organization helps some farmer, and then they say, okay, we're going to do that too. One of your colleagues, I don't know if this is a public story, but one of your colleagues told me that she said to her mother when she was 10 years old that I'm going to become a doctor and help people in Africa. And she's now one of your colleagues. She grew up to become somebody who helped that, right? So those days there was no social media, but your post, your photograph, your Instagram might inspire somebody, or a funder who's not doing anything. You know? I'll give you another really good example. When you go to the Gates Foundation, has anybody been to, in Seattle, Gates Foundation, you've been there? Yeah, so they have an article that was written by Nicholas Kristof. You know him, somebody, New York Times writer, he writes about poverty. And there's an article saying that there's a malaria problem in the world. And Bill Gates saw this one article, he tore it out of the newspaper, and he wrote a note to his father who was doing philanthropy for him, and he said, maybe we can help. Those 5 words, Gates Foundation came. Right? So when you walk into the Gates Foundation Museum, you see that newspaper is there, and he wrote on it, maybe we can help. Right? So that's what we do it for. We don't do it to reach everybody, we do it to reach the right people. One more question and then we should wrap up. I have one more slide for you. Yes?
Thank you so much. Very exciting presentation. What happens when you have an institutional social media presence and you need to balance the quality of the messages, the sensitivity of the messages, and the timeliness, because this is instantaneous, right? And you can miss the...
Thank you. And I will, by the way, I can see you much better when you asked the question earlier. So everybody's so tiny up there, we're so far back. So thank you, I can now see your face. I will say that this was a problem at the Met. When I got to the Met, the only person who was allowed to speak was the director. We had blogs, but no comments. Comments were turned off because they didn't want two-way communication. By the time I left, we changed the social media. We made a social media policy that said nobody can tweet to, with guardrails, with training, you can tweet. You can post, you can share, but you need training. Training is the most important part. And so we helped all of them do that. And I can share with you that one of the best accounts at the Met was by a security guard who worked for the Met for 29 years, and she was 55 years old, and she did this amazing social media for the Met. Why? Because she loves the Met, right? She's with the objects every day. But she was very careful, because she's a guard. She knows not to share secrets, not to share when the shipment is coming, all of that. So let that be an inspiration, that you can do this with the right people. Anybody on the team can do it. And I'll share the last story before the slide, is when we were at the Met, we had a team of museum directors from around the world. And often when you have like big American institutions, they have a lot of money, and then smaller institutions don't have money. And so it's sometimes irritating to hear these American institutions say, we do this, we do that, etc. So this group, they went to visit the security office. The Met has 700 security guards. Okay, they went to the finance office. The Met has $3 billion endowment. Finally, they came to my department, and I said, I doubled my social media team to 2 people. And somebody from Peru, she got super excited. She stood up and said, oh my God, I have 2 people also in my social media department, and I'm going to fire one of them. Because after all, how can I have the same number as the Met? And I said, please don't fire that person. Think about how you can deploy the resources. But it was an amusing way of looking at it. And so the final slide is this. All my social media tips on one piece of paper that you can have. So it's on the back of your presentation. There's also a QR code up there. But you just take a photo of this, and this is I was going to say my gift. My punishment to you is this. And you can have this, and you can look at it. And we are out of time. I just want to leave you with an idea. And that is that what I said before, you are doing such important work every day. Every day you're helping thousands, millions, tens of people. How are you telling that story? And who are you telling the story? And the timeliness of when you tell the story, what platform. Those are the things that make the decision. Right? I usually do this workshop 2 hours, 3 hours. We did it in 30 minutes. And I'm so grateful to you. What did I say? The scarcest human resources. Does anybody remember? Human attention, right? Human attention is the hardest. You gave me all this time. You gave me close. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you soon. Thank you. Stick around, and Miklos, would you come up? I have a theory: selfie or it did not happen. So, Luis, come on, come to Luis. Okay, all right. Selfie or it didn't happen. Let's see if we can get this. Okay, here we go. Everybody, almost everybody's there. All right, here we go. Almost everyone. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your lunch.